The wind howled over Winterfell's stone walls, bringing with it the scent of snow and war. Robb Stark stood alone in the godswood, eyes fixed on the heart tree, his sword gripped loosely in one hand. He came here for peace, but peace had long since fled the north. Now even the rustle of leaves felt like a whisper of betrayal. Behind him, Maester Luwin approached, his breath visible in the cold air. "You shouldn't be out here alone, my lord," he said gently. Robb didn't turn. "What do you know about Jon Snow's mother?" The question caught Luwin off guard. "Why do you ask?" "I received a raven from someone I don't know. No name, just a warning. It said, 'Your brother's blood is not what you think. Ask your father before it kills you.'" Luwin stiffened. It could be a trap, meant to sow doubt, or it could be truth. Robb's voice hardened. "I've always wondered why father never spoke of her. He gave Jon a place in this home, but never love. Never truth." Luwin paused, struggling. "Your father is a man of honor. Whatever secret he carries, it was to protect you. All of you." Robb turned now, his eyes fierce. "Protect us from what?" That question hung in the air like frost. Back inside the great hall, Ned Stark sat by the fire, rereading the same letter for the 5th time. It was unsigned, written in a strange hand, but the words hit like a sword to the gut. "The North will turn on you when they learn the truth. You should have told your son before it's too late." Catelyn entered quietly. "Robb's asking questions." Ned looked up, his face lined with worry. "He knows?" "Enough to make him angry." He closed his eyes. The secret had lived in silence for 17 years. He had promised Lyanna. He had promised to keep Jon safe, but never had he imagined it could hurt Robb. Catelyn sat beside him. "Whatever it is, you need to tell him. If he hears it from someone else, someone who wants to use it against him, it could break him." "I was trying to keep the realm from breaking," Ned whispered. "Now I fear I've only delayed it." Elsewhere in the castle, Jon Snow trained with the guards, unaware of the chaos his bloodline threatened to unleash. But far to the south, a pair of sharp eyes read the same letter that reached Winterfell. Only this one was addressed to Rose Bolton. "It's true then?" Rose muttered, reading aloud. "Jon Snow, son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, which makes Robb a pretender." The hooded man who delivered the message smiled. "Robb Stark leads the North, but if the lords learn his father lied, hid a Targaryen in plain sight, loyalty may shift." Rose sipped his wine, considering. "The North does not forgive lies, especially from their kings." He looked out at the snowy hills from his tower. "We need only one push, one whisper, and the young wolf will find himself surrounded by teeth." Back in Winterfell, Robb confronted his father that evening. The fire burned low, but his voice was loud and cold. "Tell me, is Jon my cousin?" Ned said nothing. "Is he Rhaegar's son?" Still silence. "7 hells, father, answer me." Robb slammed his hand against the table. Ned rose slowly. "Yes." The words shattered everything. Robb staggered back. "Why? Why lie to me? To the family? To him?" "Because the realm would have killed him," Ned said. "And I couldn't let that happen. Not after what your aunt went through. You trusted the wrong people, father. And now they know." "Someone knows," Robb's voice cracked. "They're going to use this against me." Ned's eyes filled with something Robb hadn't seen before. Regret. "They already are." The truth had a strange way of twisting everything Robb thought he knew. Since boyhood, he had walked beside Jon like a brother, fought with him, laughed with him. And yet, in one breath, his father had torn that bond into something unfamiliar, a lie that ran deeper than blood. He paced the Lord Solar, the fire crackling in the hearth doing little to ease the cold, crawling up his spine. Ned stood nearby, leaning heavily against the wooden table, staring into nothing. "You should have told me," Robb said, his voice low but shaking with fury. "Before I marched to war. Before I was crowned, I swore a vow, Robb," Ned answered. "To your aunt, to protect her son. He would have been killed the moment Robert learned who he was. And if anyone in the North had known I brought a Targaryen here—" "I'm not talking about them!" Robb snapped, turning to face his father. "I'm talking about me, your son, the heir of Winterfell. You raised Jon beside me, let me love him like a brother. And all this time you were hiding who he really is. What does that make me?" Ned stepped forward. "It makes you my son. It makes you the king in the north." Robb laughed bitterly. "Does it? Because if word spreads, and it will, how many bannermen will still stand behind me? How many will question your honor? My legitimacy? The war we're fighting?" He turned away, biting down on his fury, staring at the snow drifting past the window. Outside Winterfell, the banners still flew high. Wolves on grey. But inside those walls, the cracks were growing fast. Catelyn watched her son from the corridor, worry sinking deep into her bones. She had known Jon was not hers. But this was something else entirely. She found Ned alone after Robb stormed off, his head bowed, hands clasped in silence. "He's right to be angry," she said. Ned didn't respond. "You made him lead men into war built on a half-truth. I made him lead to defend his people. The secret didn't change that." "It did," Catelyn said sharply. "And you know it. Because now it's not just Lannisters we're fighting. It's whispers, doubt, rumors. You gave the North a reason to fear you. And worse, you gave your enemies something to exploit." Ned finally looked at her. "Do you think he'll hate me for it?" She didn't answer. The next day, the council chamber was tense. Robb sat at the head, flanked by Rose Bolton, Great Janumber, and a few other loyal bannermen. His face was cold stone. Grey wind lay curled beneath his chair, ears twitching with every voice raised. "We received news from the twins," Rose said. "Lord Walder is demanding reassurances. He wants proof your cause remains legitimate." Robb narrowed his eyes. "Proof?" "He's heard the rumors," Rose continued smoothly. "That your father hid a Targaryen under his roof. That Jon Snow is not your brother. That your bloodline might not be as true as once believed." Great Jon growled, slamming a fist on the table. "We marched to war for the Starks, not for whispers in the wind." But Rose kept his gaze on Robb, calm, calculating. "With respect, my lord, perception is everything. If Jon Snow is Rhaegar's son, that makes him heir to the Iron Throne, by some reckonings. The South will hear it, so will the North. And what are you suggesting?" Robb asked. "That we find Jon Snow, question him, or better yet, remove him from the board." Quietly, the room went still. Grey wind rose to his feet with a growl. Robb stood. "He's my brother." Rose's voice was like silk. "He's a threat." Robb's hands clenched. "You're speaking treason." "No, my lord. I speak only of survival." The meeting ended without further words, but the seed had been planted. Robb could see it in their faces, the doubt, the worry, and behind it all, the question they didn't dare ask out loud. Is Robb Stark the true heir of the North? Or is he just another man following a lie? That night Jon Snow stood atop the wall, the wind biting through his cloak. He was unaware of the storm brewing hundreds of leagues to the south, but he felt uneasy. Ghost shifted beside him, ears flicking. Something in the air had changed. When the raven came, black wings beating against the frost, Jon didn't recognize the seal. He broke it open, frowning as he read the words scrawled hastily in stark ink. "You are in danger. Do not return to Winterfell. There are those who wish you dead." Someone told the truth. A friend. Jon stared at the message, heart pounding. He folded it slowly, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the wall. He didn't know it yet, but his blood had become a weapon, and someone in the north had already drawn it. Snow blanketed the grounds of Winterfell like a funeral shroud. The walls stood tall and grey as ever, but inside, trust was falling apart piece by piece. Robb could feel it, the way men spoke in hushed voices when he entered. The sideways glances exchanged by bannermen who once swore undying loyalty. Even Grey Wind sensed it, restless and pacing at night, growling low at passing shadows. In the Godswood again, Robb met with his mother under the ancient heart tree. Red sap bled from its carved eyes, like it wept for what was coming. "Roose Bolton suggested I have Jon killed," Robb said without preamble. Catelyn's face didn't move. "Did he say it outright?" "He didn't need to. It was in every word he chose. Remove him quietly, like Jon is just a pawn on the board." "And what will you do?" she asked. "I'll do what I must. But I won't let them touch him." His voice cracked with the pressure. Catelyn lowered her gaze. "I won't lie to you, Robb. I've never loved that boy. I tolerated him for your father. But now he brings danger to this house. He always has, Robb muttered. We just didn't see it. He stared at the snow-covered roots beneath them. But if I protect him now, they'll call me weak. If I turn my back, I become my enemies. I lose my soul. Catelyn placed a hand on his arm. You're a king. Sometimes a soul is a price you must pay. Far to the north, at Castle Black, Jon sat in the quiet of his quarters, the cryptic letter still folded on the table. He hadn't shown it to Sam or anyone else. He didn't know who sent it, but he believed every word. Someone knew the truth. And if that someone had reach beyond the wall, they could have reach inside the Night's Watch too. Ghost lay beside the hearth, ears twitching again, a knock at the door. Jon rose, hand on the hilt of Longclaw, and opened it slowly. Sam stood there, fidgeting. There's someone here to see you, he said nervously. A woman. She says she came from the north. She wouldn't give her name, just said she had to speak with Jon Targaryen. Jon's blood froze. He followed Sam to the common hall where a cloaked woman stood by the fire. She turned as he entered. Dark hair, sharp eyes, a face he didn't recognize. You know my name? Jon asked carefully. She nodded. Your real name? I've known it since you were a babe. I served Lady Lyanna. I was there when she died. Jon stepped back, heart hammering. You're lying. No, I was there when Lord Stark took you from her arms. I helped wash the blood from the birthing bed. Then why come now? Jon demanded. Why tell me this? Because they'll kill you, she said, voice flat. Your brother's crown rests on a lie, and now that the truth is spreading, they will do anything to protect what they've built. Even if it means killing you before the truth takes root. Jon clenched his fists. Robb would never, he may not, she interrupted. But those around him will. Rose Bolton? The phrase, others who want power and fear what your blood means. Jon stared at the flames. So what now? The woman's eyes narrowed. Now you must decide if you're willing to live in the shadows forever, or if you'll fight for what's yours. Back in Winterfell, Ned Stark sat in the crypts, alone with the dead. He knelt before Lyanna's tomb, the chill of stone beneath his knees. His voice echoed softly in the silence. I kept my promise, Lyanna. I raised him. I kept him safe. But I didn't realize what the truth would cost. Robb. Robb is paying the price. He brushed frost from the carved letters of her name. I fear I've broken both of them. Above ground, Robb met again with his closest bannermen, what was left of those he trusted. Greatjon was still loyal. Galbart Glover stood firm. But others, House Tallhart, Serwyn, and even Mormont, were uneasy. We've had more desertions, Galbart reported. They're saying the king in the north was born of lies. I was born of no such thing, Robb growled. It doesn't matter, said Lady Maege Mormont grimly. They think you were. And worse, they think Jon Snow is a Targaryen. The last one. What would they have me do? Robb asked. Put my own blood to the sword? Is that the north now? There was silence. No one would say it, but some of them would. Later that night, a second raven arrived. This one was from Castle Black. It bore no seal, just 2 words on a torn piece of parchment. I know. Robb read it again. His heart sank. Jon knew, which meant the choice was no longer in Robb's hands. It was in Jon's. The storm broke over Winterfell the next morning. Snow came down in thick, blinding sheets, and the wind howled like wolves in mourning. But inside the castle walls, the real storm had already begun to tear through the Stark family. Robb stood by the window, gripping the piece of parchment so hard it crumpled in his fist. I know, 2 words, but they spoke volumes. Jon knew who he was, and that meant he'd have to choose, vanish into obscurity or rise into claim. Robb didn't know which scared him more. He turned as the door creaked open and his father stepped in. Ned looked older than Robb had ever seen him, shoulders stooped, eyes bloodshot. This secret had aged him more than war ever could. He knows, Robb said quietly. Ned gave a small nod. Then we've run out of time. Robb threw the parchment into the fire, watching the flames swallow it whole. I should have told him first. I should have gone to the wall myself. Gods, I could have explained everything. No, Ned said, stepping closer. You shouldn't have had to explain something I chose to carry alone. I kept the truth too long. I buried it so deep I forgot the cost. The cost is the North turning on me, Robb spat. It's my bannerman whispering treason. It's Rose Bolton watching me like a crow waits for death. And it's your brother isolated and hunted because of me, Ned added, voice low. They stood in silence for a long moment. The crackle of fire, the howl of wind, the weight of years between them. Do you think he'll come here? Robb finally asked. I think he'll run, Ned replied. That's what I taught him to do, survive, stay hidden. But I also think he's still your brother. He might come for answers. Robb ran a hand through his hair. If he does, I don't know if I can protect him anymore. At Castle Black, John stared at the fire, the flickering light playing across his face. The woman who had served Lyanna sat beside him, sipping broth, watching him closely. What do I do now? He asked, his voice barely audible. You run, she said simply. They'll be watching the roads, the passes. If you stay at Castle Black, you'll be dead within a moon's turn. If you go south, your head may buy peace for someone else's war. I swore an oath, John murmured. She scoffed. Oaths to the Night's Watch mean nothing if you're in the grave. Or if you're the key to a throne half the world wants to burn. John shook his head. I never wanted a throne. You don't have to want it, she said. You are it, John stood abruptly. No, I'm not going to run like a coward. If my blood causes danger, I'll go to Winterfell. I'll speak to Robb. We'll end this before someone else does it for us. You think he'll welcome you? I think he's my brother. She didn't answer. A week later, the snow was still falling when the sentries at Winterfell called out a rider approaching the gate. He wore black and rode hard, head bowed against the wind. Jon Snow had come home. Robb watched from the ramparts as his brother dismounted, his cloak stiff with frost, Ghost padding silently behind him. No guard stopped Jon. No one dared. By the time Robb reached the courtyard, Jon had already spotted him. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other. Two boys raised in the same home, now divided by blood, war, and legacy. You came, Robb said. Jon nodded. I had to. They walked through Winterfell in silence, down stone corridors that once echoed with childhood laughter. But now the walls listened to every word, every footstep. In the privacy of the solar, Robb poured 2 cups of heated wine. Jon didn't drink. I know the truth now, Jon said flatly. About my mother. About Rhaegar. I didn't want you to find out like this. How should I have found out? Jon asked. Over supper. On my deathbed. Robb winced. No, I never wanted it to matter. But it does. To them, Jon said. To your bannermen. To your allies. I've heard the rumors. Some are calling me the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Some say I should challenge you for the North. Would you? Robb asked, eyes fixed on him. Jon looked surprised. No, never. But they don't believe that, Robb whispered. They'll think you're waiting. That you're hiding ambition under loyalty. Then let me leave, Jon offered. Send me away, make a show of banishing me if you must. Robb shook his head. If I do that, they'll think I'm afraid of you. If I keep you here, they'll think I'm a traitor's son sheltering a dragon in wolf's clothing. Jon's voice dropped. So what do we do? I don't know, Robb admitted. But the walls are closing in, and Roose Bolton is watching every move I make. Jon frowned. He's the one who sent the letter. The first one, Robb blinked. How do you know? Because I've read his words before. He doesn't threaten with swords, he poisons with doubt. Outside, the storm grew louder, and inside the game had changed again. Winterfell had never felt colder, not even during the longest nights when the snow piled past the doors. The chill now came from within. Whispers behind doors, sidelong glances in the hall, bannermen smiling too quickly or not at all. The arrival of Jon Snow, or Jon Targaryen, as some had already begun to call him, had stirred the air like a blade through still water. Robb stood in the great hall, his crown heavy on his head and silence pressing on his chest like armor. Around him sat the great lords of the North, summoned under the pretense of counsel, but in truth it was a test. Would they still stand with him now that the truth had claws? Roose Bolton sat near the end of the long table, calm and unreadable as ever. Lord Karstark was absent. He had taken ill, they said. Mage Mormont sat with arms crossed, staring at Robb like a mother appraising a wayward son. The air was thick with unspoken things, and then the doors opened. John stepped inside. His black cloak trailed behind him, Ghost following close, silent as snowfall. He didn't bow. He didn't speak. He just looked at them, all of them, as if daring them to speak first. Rose broke the silence. "We welcome the former Lord Snow back to Winterfell," he said slowly, as if choosing each word like a dagger. "Though I suppose Lord no longer suits, does it? Prince, perhaps?" John's jaw tightened. "I came here to speak to my brother," he said. "Not to claim anything, not to stir rebellion." Rose smiled thinly. "Rebellion often begins with denial, just as war begins with silence." Robb's voice rang out, sharp and clear. "Enough." All heads turned toward him. "This hall is not for gossip and shadows. It's for truth. John is not here as a rival. He's here under my protection." Mage Mormont leaned forward. "Protection? From whom?" "That's what we need to find out," Robb said. "Because someone sent letters to the north, to lords and houses, and even Castle Black, revealing his blood. Not out of loyalty, but to fracture us." His eyes swept across the hall. "Ask yourselves who benefits from this." Rose tilted his head slightly. "The truth is dangerous only when built upon lies. And with all respect, my king, your father's lie is the very foundation we now stand on. And yet here we are," Robb shot back. Still standing. The room went quiet, but the damage had already sunk in. Later that evening, Robb found John in the Godswood, kneeling before the heart tree. Snowflakes clung to his dark hair like ash. "You never belonged at Castle Black," Robb said quietly behind him. "You were never just a bastard. You were a prince, and none of us knew." John didn't turn. "I never wanted to be a prince. I just wanted to belong somewhere. You belonged here. Always." John let out a bitter breath. "You don't believe that?" "Not anymore. I want to," Robb admitted. "But things are spinning out of control. I can't hold them together much longer." John rose slowly and turned. "Then let me go." "Let them see I want nothing. They won't care," Robb said. "They'll only see what you could be." John looked into his brother's eyes. "Then what are we going to do?" Robb hesitated, voice low. "We fake your death," John blinked. "What?" "We stage it quietly. You disappear beyond the wall or Essos, anywhere. But the North must believe you're gone. If they think you're dead, the Whispers die too." John stepped back. "You'd rather kill me in rumor than let me live beside you?" "No," Robb said, his voice heavy with grief. "But if you stay, they'll tear us both apart." Ghost growled softly behind them, sensing the tension in the air. John shook his head. "And what about Father?" "He won't agree," Robb said. "Which is why he won't know." John looked away. "This isn't fair." "It isn't," Robb said. "But fair died the day Robert's rebellion was built on love and ended in blood. But they weren't the only ones plotting." Rose Bolton stood in his chambers, reading a fresh letter. His son, Ramsay, had written back from the Dreadfort. "Kill the wolf pup. Leave the dragon for me." Roose folded the letter carefully and tossed it into the fire. The game was almost ready to begin. The North didn't need 2 Starks, and it surely didn't need a dragon. Night blanketed Winterfell in uneasy silence. Snow continued to fall, a quiet, relentless reminder of the North's indifference to men and their politics. But inside the stone walls, the air was thick with schemes and secrets, the kind that clung to the skin like frostbite. John stood by his window, overlooking the courtyard. Below, guards patrolled with torches, their flames flickering in the wind. He couldn't sleep. Not after what Robb had asked of him. Fake your death. It wasn't just a plan. It was a goodbye. And though Robb spoke with love, there was fear in his eyes, fear of what John had become, or what he might become in the eyes of the realm. Ghost lay curled on the floor, restless. He too sensed something was wrong. John turned away from the window and ran his hand over the direwolf's white fur. "What do you think?" he whispered. "Do I disappear to save him, or stay and become his doom?" A soft knock interrupted the quiet. John opened the door to find Arya standing there, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "You're leaving," she said. John sighed. "Is there anything in this castle I can do without everyone knowing?" "No," Arya replied, stepping inside. Not when I'm in it. He sat down on the edge of the bed, his shoulders heavy. It's not my choice. Then whose is it? She asked. Robb's. He's trying to protect everything. Winterfell, the North, our family. Arya's eyes were sharp. And to do that you have to die? Not die, disappear. She walked to the window, looking out where he had stood moments before. I don't think that's the answer. What is then? Arya turned to face him. Stay! Fight! Or if you have to leave, do it as Jon Stark, not as a ghost running from his own blood. He looked at her, her small frame carrying the weight of 1,000 shadows. You sound like a wolf, he said with a small smile. I am one, she said simply. And so are you. Down in the crypts, Ned Stark once again knelt before Lyanna's tomb. He felt as if he spent more time with the dead than the living now. Their silence was easier to bear. He whispered again, as he always did, I tried to keep him safe. I tried to do right by you. His fingers traced the name etched into stone. But the truth always comes for us, doesn't it? Footsteps echoed behind him. He turned to find Catelyn descending the stairs, her face pale in the torchlight. They're going to kill him, she said. Ned stood slowly. Who? Jon, if you let him stay here. He stared at her, jaw tightening. You're speaking like Rose Bolton. I'm speaking like a mother, she snapped. Our son is in danger. Every day Jon is here. Another blade sharpens behind Robb's back. I won't let them hurt him, Ned said. You may not have a choice, she replied. Rose isn't waiting. The Lords are choosing sides. And if Robb falls, we lose everything, Ned. Look back toward Lyanna's tomb. Maybe it's in time the truth stopped taking lives, he said softly. But Rose Bolton wasn't waiting either. In a dimly lit chamber, near the old servants' quarters, he met with 2 men, both minor northern knights, sworn to House Serwyn, but more loyal to coin than blood. You know what to do, Rose said calmly, pouring himself a cup of warm wine. No loud blades. No public spectacle. It must be quiet. A wolf gone missing in the snow. One of the knights hesitated. And if Lord Robb? Rose cut him off with a look. Robb Stark is a boy playing at war. I play for the North. The men nodded. Later that night, Jon stood in the stable, saddling a black horse. He hadn't told Robb. He hadn't told Arya. He just knew that if he waited any longer, everything would break. Ghost stood alert beside him, ears twitching. That's when he heard the crunch of boots on snow. Jon spun, too late. A hand clamped over his mouth from behind as another figure lunged with a dagger. Ghost howled and leapt, his white fur a blur. Teeth met flesh. Blood sprayed across the stable wall. Jon wrenched free, elbowed the man behind him, and drew his dagger just as the second attacker staggered forward, his arm mauled and face torn open. Who sent you? Jon demanded. The man didn't answer. So Jon ran him through. The first man tried to crawl away, bleeding from Ghost's bite, but Jon was on him in seconds. Who? He growled, blade pressed to the man's throat. The man spat blood and whispered, Bolton. Within the hour, Jon stood before Robb and Ned, the bodies at their feet. Ghost paced nearby, blood still wet on his jaws. They tried to kill me, Jon said. Here in your house. Robb's face was stone. Rose Bolton just made his move. Ned said nothing. He looked at his sons, one born of honor, the other of secrets, and finally understood. The real war had just begun, and this time it was within their own walls. The bodies were gone by morning, buried deep beyond the walls where the snow would keep their silence. But word spreads in Winterfell faster than fire in a dry hole. By dawn, every man and maid was whispering the same thing. Someone tried to kill Jon Snow, or rather, Jon Targaryen, as they were beginning to call him now, some with reverence, others with scorn. Robb stood at the battlements, watching the courtyard bustle below. The air was different, tense. Banners still flew, but loyalty no longer felt like something he could hold. It slipped through his fingers like melted snow. He turned as his father approached, his face hard with determination. I've spoken to Roose, Ned said quietly. And? Robb asked. He denied everything, calmly, coldly, like the man he's always been. So we have nothing to act on. We have Jon's word and 2 corpses, Ned replied. But no proof, no signature, no seal. Robb turned back toward the grey horizon. He's not going to stop. No, Ned agreed. And we can't keep pretending this will pass on its own. There was a long silence. I think we both know what comes next, Ned said. Robb nodded grimly. A choice. In the great hall, Robb called a gathering of his bannermen. The hall filled slowly. Some entered with pride, others with suspicion, and a few, like Rose Bolton, with polite disinterest. But all came. That much still held weight. Jon entered last at Robb's side. Not in chains, not in armor. Just a black cloak and a sword at his hip. Ghost followed close behind, a silent warning in white fur. Robb stood at the high table, his voice carrying across the room. Someone attempted to murder my brother within our walls. A coward's attack in the dark, a murmur rose. No one denied it happened, but few knew how to react, Robb continued. We have reason to believe the order came from a man seated in this very hall. He let the words hang there. Let them settle like snow on stone. Rose Bolton didn't flinch. Robb looked directly at him. Lord Bolton, do you deny this? Rose stood slowly. His voice was calm, unshaken. Of course I do, my lord. I've served House Stark for decades. My loyalty has never wavered. A few lords nodded, unsure, unwilling to take sides. But, Rose added, loyalty must go both ways. Your brother, if I may still call him that, carries a bloodline many believe to be dangerous. The blood of dragons, the blood of kings who burned cities and broke oaths. Some among us fear what that blood may do. Jon stiffened, but Robb raised a hand to silence him. Rose turned slightly, addressing the room. Ask yourselves, if the realm learns that Winterfell harbored the last living Targaryen, what will they send in return? Ravens or fire? Jon stepped forward then, his voice steady. I didn't ask for this blood. I didn't seek a throne. I only came here to protect the one person who never treated me like a threat, my brother. Rose's lips curled. And yet your name alone could undo him. Robb slammed his hand down on the table. Enough! I will not let this turn into a witch hunt. He stood tall. Jon will leave Winterfell tonight. Gasps rippled through the hall. Jon turned sharply. What? Robb looked at him. You leave quietly. We'll spread the word you've gone south or east, that you've gone to find peace or death or whatever lie we need. But you disappear. No letters, no banners, no armies. You're sending me away, Jon said, voice cold. I'm keeping you alive, Robb snapped. Rose smirked. Wise, a king who chooses peace over blood. But make no mistake, Robb said, turning toward Bolton. If another man in this hall raises a hand against my blood, I will answer it with fire and steel. The next corpse won't be buried in silence. He looked out at his lords, voice rising. The North has enemies enough. If we start stabbing each other in the dark, then we're no better than the men who butchered my father. No one dared respond. Robb's eyes met Jon's. This isn't what I wanted, but it's what it is, Jon replied quietly. That night, Jon stood at the gates of Winterfell, horse-saddled, Ghost beside him. Arya was there, silent but fierce, her arms crossed and her face tight with anger. Bran had said his goodbye with tears. Sansa had not come at all. Robb handed him a satchel of coins, a small dagger and a folded parchment. Head east, he said, to White Harbour. Lord Manderley owes us. From there, sail wherever the wind takes you. Jon nodded, his jaw clenched. You don't have to forgive me, Robb said. Jon met his eyes. You're my brother. I always will. Then he mounted, and with a quiet whistle to Ghost, he rode into the falling snow. No banner, no shield. No name, just another shadow in the storm. Snow fell heavier in Jon's absence, as if the North itself mourned the quiet departure of one of its own. Winterfell felt hollow. The walls stood strong, the fires burned high, but there was something broken in its heart, something that wouldn't mend with heat or stone. Robb stood alone in the godswood that night, staring up at the weeping red eyes of the heart tree. The blood of his house had always run deep, but never had he felt it thinning. He had watched Jon disappear into the dark, pushed him away with his own hand, and all to save a kingdom that barely held together. Was this what ruling meant? Sacrifice, isolation, guilt? His father joined him quietly beneath the boughs, footsteps soft over the frozen ground. "You did what you thought was right," Ned said after a long pause. Robb didn't look at him. "No, I did what I thought would buy me more time," Ned sighed. "Time is all any of us ever try to buy. It's what I bought with lies. And now we pay." Robb turned to face him. "If John dies out there alone, if someone hunts him down and puts a knife in his chest because of our choices, what will we have left? I won't be a king. I'll be a coward with a crown." "He won't die," Ned said softly, though his voice betrayed the doubt he carried. "He's too much of a Stark, too much of her." They stood in silence for a long time. "Do you regret it?" Robb finally asked. "Keeping the secret?" Ned's eyes drifted to the red leaves above them. "Every day. And every day I remind myself why I kept it." Robb nodded slowly, his breath fogging in the cold. "We have to be better than them, than the ones who built their thrones on corpses and crowned themselves in fire and blood." Ned smiled faintly. "Then start tomorrow. You're still king, and Winterfell still stands." But not everyone was content to let the past die. Roose Bolton sat in his chambers, fingers steepled, eyes locked on the map of the north. His face, as always, was unreadable, ice behind pale eyes. A raven sat in its cage nearby, the message already tied to its leg. "To the twins," he said to his servant. "It's time Lord Frey heard my terms." The servant bowed and left. Roose sipped his wine and whispered to the dark, "Let the boy king keep his wolf. For now, but the north remembers, and it favors the strong." Weeks passed. Snow buried the roads, choked the rivers, and sealed villages off from the rest of the realm. But still, word travelled. Jon Snow had vanished. No sightings, no letters, no rumors. To some, he had died in the snow. To others, he had returned to the wall or sailed east in secret. To the ones who feared him, his absence was not comfort. It was a ticking clock, and to Robb, it was a wound that refused to close. Then one morning, a raven arrived bearing strange news. A merchant ship had docked in White Harbor. No sigils, no banners, but aboard it was a man cloaked in black with a white direwolf at his side. He spoke little. "Paid in silver." Vanished the next day. No one had seen him since. Robb read the message twice. Then again, he didn't show it to anyone. He simply folded the parchment and tucked it away in his cloak. A quiet, private ember of hope. Spring did not come, but the war did. Roose Bolton had rallied houses in secret, smaller ones, those bruised by Robb's command or ignored in his rise. With promises of stronger leadership, safety, and southern alliance, he had turned them to his side. By the time the first fires lit in the woods near Winterfell, Robb knew what was coming, but he was ready. He summoned his loyal. Bannerman, Greatjon, Mormont, Glover, Serwyn, the ones who still wore wolf banners and called him king. With their full chests, "We hold Winterfell," he told them. Not for pride, not for vengeance, but for the North, for our people. For those who still believe in something better than treachery and blood. No man flinched. They were wolves, outnumbered perhaps, but never outmatched. As Roose's forces approached, ready to choke Winterfell from all sides, he received a raven of his own. Its parchment was weather-worn. The wax seal broken, but the words were clear. "I am not dead. I am watching. Come for my brother, and I will come for you." Roose crushed the letter in his fist. For the first time in years, he felt something like hesitation. The war for the North was far from over, but one truth had been carved into ice and fire alike. The blood of the dragon may burn cities, but the heart of the wolf endures. And somewhere in the shadows of snow and silence, Jon Snow was alive, waiting, watching, and ready to return when the time was right.